Today is October the 20th. What was Paul like? Let's find out together as we read 2 Corinthians chapters 8 to 13. Today I'd like you to start reading in 2 Corinthians 8 and just read to the end of that book. Now, in the first part of the book of 2 Corinthians, we saw Paul's interaction with the Corinthian church. We know that he was concerned about them. We know that he has concerns at how they accept him. Well, in chapter 8, he asks them to give generously. The purpose of that giving is for the Christians in Jerusalem. And he details what will be done with the money that they give in chapter 9. Starting in chapter 10, through the end of 2 Corinthians, Paul defends his authority as an apostle. Now, this gets back to a theme that actually started in 1 Corinthians. Apparently, the Corinthian church was a little bit ambivalent in their approach to Paul. They liked him, they loved him, but sometimes they didn't think Paul really had the authority that other apostles who were traveling through and visiting them had. As we read about what Paul says here, notice what Paul writes in chapter 10, verse 10. Some say Paul's letters are demanding and forceful, but in person he's weak. Paul deals with that impression over the next 4 chapters. In those chapters, he says, when I was with you, I chose to work just like you worked so that you didn't have to support me at all. Paul went on in chapter 11, he talks about the difficulties that he had, the opposition that he had while he was in Corinth and elsewhere, especially in Ephesus. He talks about being in prison, being whipped, even facing beasts. In chapter 12, Paul talks about the vision that he had, a vision of the Lord being caught up into heaven. And then he talked about the thorn in the flesh. It's kind of hard to know just what he was talking about. The 2 prevailing theories are that Paul's thorn in the flesh was poor eyesight, that Paul really had a hard time seeing. And that could be the use of the term thorn in the flesh occurs elsewhere in Scripture, I think just once. And there it refers to an individual, an adversary. Well, he talks here about a thorn in the flesh being a messenger from Satan. Now, it could be, and personally, while I do believe Paul had poor eyesight, I think when he talks about the thorn in the flesh, he's talking about the Judaizers who would follow him and do everything that they could to destroy not only his ministry, but the results of his ministry. That, in fact, might be who Paul is referring to as the super apostles that he refers to earlier. So at the end of all of this time, Paul says, when I am with you, I am gentle. That's reality. Now, normally when I write, I'm also gentle, but in your case, I couldn't be. Paul then in chapter 13 says, look at verse 5, examine yourselves to see if your faith is genuine. Test yourselves. Paul says, you look at yourself. You make sure that you're following so that when I can get there, I can be gentle with you. But if you don't test yourself, I'm willing to come and be tough on you. That's kind of what Paul was like. Now, in verse 11, Paul's final greeting, he does what he frequently does at the end of his letters, short, little, one-word commands. Dear brothers and sisters, I close my letter with these last words. Be joyful. Grow up. Encourage each other. Live in harmony and peace. Simple commands. But boy, if we could do those things, wouldn't it be great? That is the mark of a true disciple. Like, follow, and subscribe to this devotional on whatever platform you use to listen to it. Email your questions to us at questions@becomehope.com. Tomorrow, we'll ask the question, what good is the law?